So we finally got some extra information around these 2026 regulations coming up, and surprise, surprise, it's negative. It's not sounding great. The simulations are looking sketchy. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. And here we are in beautiful Cape Town, South Africa. Robben Island is right behind me. And you could see Table Mountain, but the clouds are a bit mad. Anyway, that's not important. What is important is these 2026 regulations do not seem to be going as planned, which again, shouldn't be a shock given recent times how the sports tried to change things. And it feels like, doesn't it? It feels like more often than not, they kind of leave themselves in the lurch and they seem to get these things wrong. Maybe that's just negativity bias. I'm not sure. So the teams have been supplied in the simulator. It feels like it's kind of a base car. Again, the full motorsport.com article on screen now, link in the description down below. Please give that a full read. So you've got 50% electrical energy, 50% PU energy coming from these new engines 2026 onwards in the pursuit of a more modern friendly, right, so many electric cars knocking about in the world. Not many in South Africa actually, haven't really seen any electric cars out here, but that is the way the consumer motoring market is moving. F1 always wants to try and stay road relevant, and this seems to be their ambition, to make it 50% electric, 50% PU, conventional PU anyway with synthetic, sustainable fuels, right? That's the plan long term. But what that has brought is this emphasis and this desire to make the aerodynamics movable, which that does already exist. We already have DRS. There's a flap in the rear wing that goes up down the straight lines when you're within a second, giving you more straight line speed as an overtaking aid. However, this movable aero is more of a fundamental thing, not identical to the DRS system, which is kind of in a way a push to pass, isn't it? This is more about just making the cars more efficient, less draggy in a straight line, but you know, higher aero when it's needed, right? You optimize the performance of the car depending on where you are on the track. In theory, it makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, adding more movable aerodynamics to the car does make things inherently more complicated, but also it shifts aero balance. The amount of times, if I had £1 for every time a driver talks about balance on a weekend, be a very, very, very rich man. And it's key, okay? And this seems to be the issue that's come up in this simulator data, okay? This is the problem that seems to have manifested. When the rear wing opens, even more so than how DRS currently works, it's really shifting the balance to such an extreme that cars are losing it with the slightest, there's no more flat through 130R, the slightest little bit of turning and you're out. The cars seem to be super, super extra, concerningly, dangerously skittish on the rear end, even when you're going in a straight line. It's not good. Right, can anyone in the comments let me know what this bird is? I've seen a few of these knocking about, right? They've got like long beaks. Come on, can you turn side on so we can see? Look, I get this is uncharted territory, and this is all fundamentally based off of one approach, which is to make the rear wing the fundamental component to this movable aero, along with the DRS that already exists. With the aero balance shifting so much, maybe you're going to have to pivot to a system where the front wing also has movable DRS, which, you know, fundamentally, that is kind of what I assumed it would be anyway. We wouldn't just be getting essentially more DRS at the rear wing. They would try and do something front and rear, because, you know, the front wing, as much as underbody floor, that is key, that is the biggest factor to determine whether you're going to have success on track. But the front wing is the first thing that touches the air coming onto the car, and that's going to affect how the air, you know, affects how it hits the rear wing, how it hits the floor, how it hits the side pods, everything, right? It all fundamentally comes from the front wing. I mean, it talks in this article about the shift in aero balance being 3 times what we already get with DRS. Concerning, and I don't know. Look, these are very, very intelligent people, way more qualified to be making these rules than myself. However, you've got to question that 50-50 split. And many, you know, Break F1, for example, shout out Blake. He's been very critical of it, ex-Red Bull performance engineer, of course. He's an educated man on such topics. Has never been complimentary towards this, and many people, many others I've kind of spoken to, interacted with online, have been less than confident that this is the way to go. And is it just posturing? You know, is it just a sport trying to give off this image that, oh, look at us, carbon neutral, carbon zero, all that stuff, right? Which, don't get me wrong, I'm fully behind. I'm fully behind making this sport as, you know, changing the calendar, moving these races closer together. I mean, Williams are struggling for it at the minute, but at the end of the day, putting Australia, Japan, China close together, doing as much as you can to limit the haulage, freight, logistics, all that, how far these things go. Like, I'm all behind that, okay? But at the end of the day, the cars themselves account for a fraction of a percent, quite literally. F1 did their, was it back in 2020? I think I'll put the graphic on the screen when they looked at how much, you know, all of the different things that go into F1, how much the cars actually take up. I think it was 0.4%. I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but if these cars stayed V12, right, and had the old PUs from back in the day, it would be a fractional. It would literally be offsetted. The entire carbon from that would be offsetted, it's not even a word, offsetted by changing a couple of the races order-wise on the calendar completely, right, to shorten up the logistics. The cars have to, that's the focus, that's what everyone's looking at, and that's what, you know, by doing 50-50, you're being seen to be environmentally sustainable and environmentally friendly. But there's a big difference between, you know, being seen to do something and actually doing something that's maybe going to do more harm to the sport. Look, ultimately, Liberty and the FIA, F1 is their core product. It's in their best interest to make it shine as much as possible. But I don't know, it just feels like it was a marketing decision first and foremost. It was an image decision first and foremost to go for this 50-50 petrol and electric split. And then it's like, right, engineer your way to make this kind of work. But if you've got cars potentially spinning in a straight line, it's certainly not the solution. Now, again, I do think having movable front and rear aero should help with this balance issue. And it's weird to me that they've been testing just the rear wing, because I don't know, that feels like a bit of a common sense choice to do front and back, especially if you're going to be using movable aero throughout the lap, not just in these DRS straight line spots. I mean, it might be funny, if these cars are getting skittish around even slight curves, right, you're pretty much going in a straight line, what chance they got around like Saudi Arabia, where there's like one straight line on the straight, but the amount of full throttle you get in Saudi, where you're not actually going in a straight line, these cars would be gone, fin, done. You know the most damning piece from this article, right? It literally says, I'm going to quote this, one insider even suggested that the only way to prevent the car spinning out was to drive so conservatively that the lap times ended up being slower than the current F2 machinery. It's April 2024. These regulations are coming into play at the start of 2026, but the teams have got to start moving soon, right? In terms of actually developing these cars. There's a bug. There's literally a bug right on the lens. Right on the lens. In fact, I can take this wide angle off. Look. Ooh. You see it? There it is, look. Off you go. That's better. I don't know, if we're going to reject Andretti and say that they're not going to have enough time to make it work in F1, why is this happening so late? It feels like this should have been signed, sealed, or off before this season even started, in my opinion. I feel like fundamental, you know, regulation changes, once again, not anywhere near as big as they were in 2022, of course, an evolution of what we've already got. And obviously the engine regs have been signed off for the longest time now. I don't know, it just, maybe I'm expecting too much, but it feels like this should have been signed off a way ago, and it just isn't. Anyway, that's a wrap. Let me know what you think of this different style. Maybe I've got this DJI Osmo now. I could do this a little bit more often, make my short, snappy videos a little bit more interesting. I'm not always going to be in South Africa, so, you know, needs must. It's literally been spitting this entire time with rain. Why did we bring the British weather with us, Hannah? What are we doing? Anyway, if you enjoyed this one, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel. My name's Tomo, thanks again, have a good one. Ta-da.